Hey everyone, today we're going to be going through all of the Frost Death Knight cards that have been revealed. The way Blizzard's doing it this expansion is they're just releasing it in batches. So today's November 9th. Yesterday they released all of the Frost cards for Death Knight. A little bit later today they're going to be doing Unholy. So we're going to take a look at those and review those whenever that time comes. So let's get into it and get started. So Acolyte of Death is the first card. It's a 3 mana, 1 frost, 3/4. After a friendly undead dies, draw a card. I see a lot of potential in this card, especially for the double unholy 1 frost decks. The unholy decks are going to have a lot of corpse generation. You're going to have a lot of undeads hitting the board. I believe your hero power is an undead as well, so that's going to get you a card. This just seems like a very solid auto include in anything that splashes even a little bit of frost. I could see this also being very good in the double blood single frost deck if that sees any play. Just because, I mean, card draw is always really solid, especially having a body attached to it. So come turn 3, you have 2 or 3 undeads on the board by then. You drop this, trade in, and you'll refill your whole entire hand. So this seems like a very powerful zoo card, as well as just a generally good card. I would probably give this 4 stars. So next up on Frost, we have Bonebreaker. It's a 1 mana, 1 frost, 2/2. After your hero attacks a minion, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. I foresee this being a pretty good card as well. It is great for tempo. Again, I think this is going to go really, really well into a double unholy 1 frost deck. As of right now, I mean, obviously they haven't released all of the unholy cards yet. I think the double unholy single frost is going to be the prominent deck when the expansion first drops. This just seems too powerful. So turn 1, you can do this, and you own the board. And then you're also putting face damage out. I don't foresee this card being bad in any way. It's a very, very cheap weapon. You can get it for free with that new tutor that we'll talk about in a little bit. I also am going to give this 4 stars. So Death Chiller is up next. With Death Chiller, it is pretty much another Flame Waker from what I can tell. Flame Waker is actually my favorite card that's ever released in Hearthstone. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for that. I just really enjoy the tempo style of play, spell slinging. When I play Magic, I play blue-red. If you can't tell from my shirt, it has the blue on it. I'm a very big fan of spell slinging and having excess damage come out. It is 2 frost, so it's a 2 mana, 2 frost, 2/3. After you cast a spell, deal 1 damage to 2 random enemies. If frost is good, this is going to be good. Based on all the frost cards that we've seen so far, I don't know how this is not an auto include, especially when you start to tie in the 0 mana refresh 2 crystals. It's free damage. The one difference between this and Flame Waker, which is probably going to make it not so toxic to everybody who dislikes Flame Waker, it does read deal 1 damage to 2 random enemies. That's going to imply that it can't do 2 damage to the same target. So whereas Flame Waker, you cast a spell, if there's no other enemy minions on board, it's going to do 2 damage to face. This reads as if it's going to only do 1 damage to face. So I don't think we're going to run into all the serious issues that we ran into with the Flame Waker being in meta. So for this card, I'm going to give it 3 stars. So next up, we have Defrost. Again, a 2 mana, 1 frost card, draw a card, spend 2 corpses to draw another. I don't see how this is not an auto include in the 2 unholy, 1 frost deck. I don't know how prominent corpses are going to be in both mainly frost, mainly blood decks. You might have a hard time getting corpses in. I could see a 2 mana Frost, 1 Unholy working out to get corpses. But this is a. If you have 2 corpses, it's strictly better Arcane Intellect. And Arcane Intellect's almost an auto include in every mage deck. So I don't know how we could see this card not be prominent as long as Frost and Blood get pretty decent corpse generation cards. Otherwise, I feel like this is an auto include in an Unholy Frost deck. I'm going to give this 4 stars. Anything with draw a card, especially drawing 2 cards, is a ton of value, especially for 2 mana. Again, if you have the corpses, it's just a strictly better Arcane Intellect. So I give it 4 stars. Up next is Frost Strike. It is a 2 mana, 2 Frost, deal 3 damage to a minion. If that kills it, discover a Frost Rune card. So this completely is dependent on how strong Frost cards are. For now, it does look like that it could be pretty powerful. The really big benefit to discovering a Frost Rune card is you can get those 3 Frost Rune requirement cards out of Discover. So if you were running this with like a 2 Frost, 1 Blood, or a 2 Frost, 1 Unholy, you can still get those really powerful Frost cards without gimping yourself in the deck building process. It's a worse Frostbolt that gives you the opportunity to discover if it kills. If you're running this in a full Frost deck, I really see that as the only way that this is going to work out for you. Because of that, I'm probably only going to give this 2 stars. Next up, we have Frostworm's Fury. It's a 7 mana, 3 Frost, deal 5 damage, freeze all enemy minions, and summon a 5/5 Frostworm. I don't think this is a very good card. Especially with the 3 Frost requirements, this is a card that you would hopefully want to pull from a Frost Strike. 7 mana, more or less do nothing on your turn. It just seems too slow. I know you're freezing enemy minions, but that's really just buying you an extra turn. You are summoning a 5/5. Unfortunately, these days a 5/5 on turn 7 is not going to do it. I could see this getting cheated out somehow, or using it to finish the game. I feel like this is just a win more card, and unless you're pulling it from a Discover mechanic, I don't foresee this seeing much realistic play. Unless 3 Frost just ends up being insanely powerful, I don't see this seeing much play. So I'm going to give it 2 stars. Next up, we have Glacial Advance. This is a 3 mana, 1 Frost, deal 4 damage. Your next spell this turn costs 2 less. I do think this is a very good card. The cost isn't too bad when you consider that it makes your next spell 2 less. You're paying 1 mana for 4 damage. That can go face. This seems very, very powerful in a Frost heavy deck. Pretty much everything we've seen so far is Frost is going to be your bursty spec, where you're just trying to go blow up and get combos and set everything up from there. I don't know how this doesn't see a ton of play, especially with it just costing 1 Frost Rune. A recurring theme that I've seen, and I believe is going to be the case, is these single rune cards are going to be very, very powerful because you only need to splash Frost in. So consider this for Blood, which we'll be doing the Blood review in a couple days. But if it makes your next spell cost 2 less. So if you have that 1 Blood spell that increases your maximum health by 5, that's now free. So you can deal 4 damage, clear their board, get a little bit control-y stuff going on, even though this, you would say this is more of an aggro spell, I would say, in general. But it's going to make that spell free. So I think this is a very, very good card that is going to see a ton of play. Again, I don't know how good a 3 Frost Rune deck is going to end up being. So the combo aspect of it might not work out as well, but just the general 4 damage, reduce your next spell by 2, I think it's going to be very powerful. I'm going to give this one 4 stars. So next up we have Harbinger of Winter. It's a 2 mana, 2 frost, death rattle, draw a frost spell, 2/2. So for this one, I do think it's a little slow, with it being a death rattle and not a battle cry. If you are running that combo based frost deck, which is probably what you're going to be doing if you're running 2 frost runes, I could see it seeing some play, but just to draw a frost spell, that's going to get diluted by the amount of frost spells you have. I don't know that this is going to be very powerful. I'm going to give this a 2.5. Right, so next up we have Horn of Winter. This card is completely busted. It is a 0 mana, 2 frost, refresh 2 mana crystals. With me saying that it's busted, it's still going to rely on that 2 frost deck minimum, and I'm not 100% sure how powerful that's going to be. But when you consider the combo possibilities, and this is going to set off some more cards that we're going to see later where it'll do a little bit of damage here and there, kind of like that Flame Waker build, this is just going to give you 2 free damage off of that. And it's going to set up more combo pieces. It's like a pre-nerf Innervate. You just need to cast something first. So I do think this is a very, very good card. Obviously you need the 2 frost runes to run this. Depending on how many discover mechanics there are in Death Knight, getting this in a blood deck would be very, very powerful. Even a Zoo Unholy deck, this could be very strong. I actually give this card 5 stars. Next up we have Howling Blast. That's going to be 3 mana, 1 frost, deal 3 damage to an enemy and freeze it, deal 1 damage to all other enemies. So this is a slightly weaker but more controlling swipe. Swipe back in the day was an auto-include in every single Druid deck. I think this is going to be borderline auto-include in any Death Knight deck that can afford the 1 frost cost. The one downside is it only freezes the main target, so it can buy you an extra turn for your Zoo decks, your control decks, if they have one big target on board, and can wipe out small things. I really like this card to deal with Imp Warlock. Typically they'll put their location out, buff one of their imps, and then you have a bunch of other 1/1 imps that you have to deal with. So you cast this on the main one, freeze it, and wipe the rest of their imps. This card alone can win you a game against Imp Warlock. Because of that, I'm going to give this 4 stars. Icy Touch is next. This is a Frostbolt, except it costs 1 less, and it freezes it. Again, this is going to go into those combo pieces. There is no frost cost on this one. I wanted to include it with the frost cards just because of what it is. It's very hard to judge some of these other cards without seeing this. This is a very easy combo piece to use. This is solid to discover on. Frostbolt doesn't see a ton of play anymore in Mage, mainly because of the 2 mana infused 3 frozen touch that you just keep getting it in your hand. Now that one doesn't freeze, but having that recurring 3 damage is very strong in Mage. I do think this is going to see some play in Frost decks. I don't think it's going to see any play in Unholy or Blood-based decks. I'm going to give this 2 stars. Up next we have Lady Death Whisper. This is another 3 Frost rune card. It's 4 mana, 3 Frost, 4/3, and its death rattle is copy all Frost spells in your hand. if the Frost combo deck is going to work, this is going to be why. It is a death rattle, so it is slower than a battle cry, and it is susceptible to being silenced, so it's still going to have problems against priests. If the combo deck is going to work, this is going to be a key component of it. Copying all frost spells in your hand is insanely powerful, especially if you consider you might have 1 or 2 Horn of Winters in there. If you have 2 Horn of Winters in your hand, that is going to be 4 free frost spells that refresh your mana crystals. So that's going to set off any of your cards that need frost spells. I see a lot of 1-turn kill potential in this card. We'll see how well it works out, but if I was just basing this on how good it's going to be in a Frost Rune deck, I would say 5 stars, because the Frost Rune deck is not going to work without this. I don't think 3 Frost Runes is going to be a very good deck, at least not initially. Maybe after the following expansion when it gets a little bit more support, some more spells. Considering that I believe at this point they have revealed all of the Frost cards, I don't know that this is going to be strong enough to warrant you going 3 Frost Runes in a deck. Next up, we have another 3 cost Frost card. It's 6 mana, 5/5. Spend up to 5 corpses. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy for each. So, this can hit enemy face multiple times. This can hit for 10 damage on turn 6 if your enemy's board is empty, which Frost does have some cards that can help you empty their board. If you consider throwing this in with Bran, you will need to spend 5 corpses twice if you use it with Bran. But that's 20 damage face if their board's empty for 9 mana. It seems like a very powerful effect. My concern with this card is the 5 corpse cost while having to run 3 Frost Rooms. Frost doesn't seem to have a ton of corpse generation. Obviously, there are some no rune cards that can help with that. There's always like neutral cards that can help with that. I don't foresee you having 10 corpses to spend to make this the 1-turn kill potential that it could be, unless this is the only corpse spender you're putting in your deck. That's very possible. I see potential in this card with the current support that exists for Death Knight and Full Frost. If I'm basing it just on a Full Frost deck, it's an auto-include. I don't see 3 Frost being very good. I'm going to rate this a 3. Alright, next up we have Might of Menethil. It is a 4 mana, 2 frost, 4/2 weapon. Spend up to 3 corpses. Freeze that many enemy minions. This one is hard to judge because I know Frost likes to obviously freeze. I mean, obviously that makes sense. But I don't think this helps towards your win condition. And again, this is a corpse spender. So if you're running this, it's going to be even harder to make the Marrow Manipulator go off the way you would want it to. I could see this getting put into maybe a 2 frost, 1 blood control deck. I don't foresee this seeing much play. Yeah, the 4/2 is nice. I don't think you could run this in an Unholy Splash. I think you would only be able to do this if you splash in blood for it to see any play. I'm going to give this 2. I'm tempted to give it 1 star. I'm going to give it 2 stars. Let me know what you think about this card. Next up, we have Overseer Frigidara. It is a 6 mana, 2 frost, 5/6 battle cry. Draw 2 spells. If they're both frost spells, deal 2 damage to all enemies. You have to run this in a 3 frost rune deck. I know it has 2 frost runes. If you're splashing blood or unholy and you're only running minions in those colors, maybe. I feel like this is just a setup. So how I was saying, the Marrow Manipulator, if you can clear their board and have those corpses, that would be very good. I think you pair this with the Mirror Manipulator, play this the turn before, hopefully wipe their board, get 2 more Frost spells to clear out any additional minions, or just set yourself up the way you need to, and then brand Mirror Manipulator on the next turn. Hopefully get a kill. As far as grading this goes, this one's a hard one to grade because, again, I don't see it getting played in a 2 Frost deck. I feel like you have to run this in 3 Frost. It's another auto-include if you're running 3 Frost, but I don't think it's going to see any play outside of that, and I don't know how good 3 Frost is going to be. I'm going to give this a 3-star. Alright, Remorseless Winter is up next. It's a 4 mana, 1 Frost, deal 2 damage to all enemies, draw a card. I actually think this is very, very powerful. I think you're going to see this played in both double Unholy and double Blood decks that splash Frost in. It's a better Consecrate, so it's going to hopefully clear a board. Now, Consecrate only ever saw play because of equality, in my opinion. So without a equality effect, I don't know that this is going to be as good. But you do have the draw a card benefit onto it. It's another really good card to discover if you have any discover cards in your deck. I do think this is going to get included in Unholy and Blood decks just because it helps with that board presence. Blood's going to use it to control. Unholy's going to use it to get that extra card and hopefully make it to where they can't just clear your board with their minions. I'm going to give Remorseless Winter 4 stars. Repulsive Gargantuan is a 5 mana, 1 Frost, 3/6. Enemy characters can't be healed. I think this is a great tech card. I don't think it's good enough to get included in the decks. This is a very hot and cold card, no pun intended. If you discover this in the right situation, it can win you the game. So if you're going against Priest or Paladin and you discover this, very, very powerful. Stats aren't that bad. And it's going to keep them completely from healing themselves. If I'm talking about in the Discover pool, this is 4 stars. With this as a collectible card that you're going to put in your deck, I don't think this is going to see any play in a deck. So for that, I'm going to give it 1 star. But again, I do see the possibilities of this being powerful as a discoverable card. Next up, we have Rime Sculptor. 5 mana, 1 Frost, 3/3. Summon 2 2/1 Rime Elementals with Death Rattle 2, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. So this is what the Rime Elemental looks like. So this, I do think, is pretty powerful. It reminds me of a Dr. Boom Mini, which anyone who played back in Goblins vs. Gnomes, the first Hearthstone expansion, knows how oppressive Dr. Boom was. I think this, you'll see this more in an Unholy deck than anything else because it's going to give you 3 corpses. Now, this is a good corpse builder for Frost. I don't think that this does what Frost wants to do, to go into. You'll obviously put this in a full Frost deck just because it is what it is and it gives you corpses. I think you're going to see more play in a double Unholy 1 Frost deck than anything else. It spawns slightly weaker mage skeletons, but that deal 2 damage to a random enemy is very powerful from anyone who's played against a mage or plays the new mage decks with the skeletons. I mean, that can set you up completely. So I do think this is a good card. I think a lot of people are underselling this card just because of the stats that it has for the cost. I'm going to give it 3 stars. I know that's not super high. I think it's going to have a very niche fit, and in the deck that it's in, I think it's going to work really well. I don't think it's going to be a generally good card, which is why I'm only giving it 3 stars. Next up, we have Rime Fang Sword. It's a 3 mana, 2 Frost, 2/3. After your hero attacks, reduce the cost of a spell in your hand by 1. This is auto-include in every single Frost deck. If you're going to be doing 3 runes, This is also going to see play in a 2 Frost, 1 Unholy, or 2 Frost, 1 Blood. A 2/3 weapon is solid enough. When you consider the next card we're going to look at, which is Rune Forging, this now is a 2 mana 2/3 that you can tutor out. That's going to reduce the cost of a spell in your hand. This is going to be great for comboing potential in Frost. It's going to be good to help with any big spells that Blood comes out with. And we'll see a little bit later today what Unholy releases. And, I mean, it can help buff your board if Unholy gets some buffs. So, I think this is going to be a very played card. General power level isn't high, but it's what this card can do for you that I like a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a 4-star. I think this is a very good card. I think it's definitely going to see play. Next up, we have Rune Forging. Again, this is a no rune card. I wanted to include it because of that Ramfang sword. You do have to spend 1 corpse, but that's not a big ask, especially with some of the neutral cards that we have. And it tutors out any weapon in your deck. So even if you're not running Ramfang sword, maybe you want to run Frostmourne or something along those lines, it guarantees your weapon that you pull out. Any tutor spell in any card game, like Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Tutors are just extremely powerful. I'm actually going to give this 5 stars for what it is. If you're going to run a weapon in your deck, I think this is an auto-include. Alright, so next up is Thessarian. It is a 4 mana, 1 Frost, 3/3, Reborn with a Battle Cry and Death Rattle, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. This is extremely powerful. I think this is going to see a ton of play. I think it's going to see even more play in a double Unholy single Frost deck than anything. This doesn't build necessarily towards the combo potential of a full Frost deck, but it does do that deal 2 damage. The thing you got to consider with this, especially for the Unholy decks, this is going to give you 2 corpses and deal 6 damage split between 3 enemies when it's all said and done. I think this is extremely powerful, especially for 4 mana. I'm actually going to give this card 5 stars. It's the only 5-star card I'm giving out today. Reason being, it's just got way too much potential, especially with an Unholy deck. This is going to clear your enemy's board with the 2 damage to a random enemy. This can stall your enemy out to make them not want to touch it, to activate the Reborn and Death Rattle. I think this is a very, very, very powerful card that we're going to see shape the way some Unholy decks are played. I personally, I know you've heard me talk about it a lot, I think the best deck day 1 is going to be double Unholy 1 Frost. Just looking at the synergy that you can pull off between that, I think double Unholy 1 Frost is going to be the Death Knight deck, at least starting out, and I think this is an auto-include in that deck. And finally, so I know it's Amir because I play Smite, so it's Amir Jar Frostbreaker, I believe. It is a 1 mana, 1 Frost, 1/2. It's Battlecry, gain 1 attack for each Frost spell in your hand. So I do think this is a decent card. My concern is it's going to be played mainly in a Frost deck. It's a very cheap minion, so that's going to help you with those corpses in Frost. But I don't think you're going to splash this in any other decks because the chance of you having a Frost spell in a deck that only has 1 Frost rune isn't great. And even if you're running a full Frost deck, you're hoping that this gets 2 or 3 attack on turn 1. A 4/2 is very powerful. It's not too powerful to deal with. I'm going to give this card 3 stars. So that's it for Frost. We have new releases coming out today for Unholy. I'll be doing another video tomorrow going over those. But I'm really, really happy with Death Knight. So far, I'm a Death Knight main in Warcraft. You can see Frostmourne behind me. I have the sword and everything. I've been waiting for Death Knight to come out for about 6 years, which is why I started making this video. I'm unbelievably hyped. I'm gonna have a ton of fun. I am gonna make some Frost decks just to try it because I like combo playstyle. I just don't know how good it's gonna be. But until next time, guys, enjoy, and hopefully I see you in the tavern.